I never expected to open my eyes again after jumping from that bridge. But here I am, back in time, with a chance to rewrite my story. 3 years ago, Clara left me for the boss's son. She told me I lacked vision while she fed him all my ideas. Brandon fired me in front of everyone. The same day I found divorce papers waiting at home. My wife of 5 years chose power over love. She mocked my kindness, called me weak, and walked away with the man who stole my career. They thought I was finished. They celebrated over my broken life. What they never expected was for me to come back rich and watch them lose everything. This time, I won't be the nice guy. This time, I'm playing to win. I never expected my life to unravel so completely. Not when I had built it so carefully, brick by quiet brick. My name is Adrian Wu. Until yesterday, I was a senior financial analyst at Meridian Tech, where I spent 6 years developing algorithms that turned the company's modest profits into industry-leading growth. I was the guy who stayed late without complaint, who brought homemade lunches instead of joining the executives at their expense account restaurants. I drove the same reliable sedan I bought fresh out of college while my colleagues upgraded to luxury cars with each promotion. Clara used to love that about me, my stability, my thoughtfulness. When we met at a mutual friend's gallery opening 5 years ago, she said I was the first man she dated who listened more than he spoke. She was dazzling that night in a red dress. Her dark hair swept up to reveal the elegant curve of her neck. I remember feeling stunned that someone so vibrant would even notice me. We married 6 months later. She brought color and life to my carefully ordered world. I brought security to hers. It worked for a while. The first signs of trouble came, subtly. Clara started attending more work events without me. Her texts became shorter, less frequent. When I asked about her day, her answers grew vague. I told myself it was nothing. We were both busy. Marriages go through phases. The corner office at Meridian came with a view of the bay and long hours. I accepted both without complaint because each promotion meant more security for our future, for the children we planned to have once we were ready. Brandon Xu joined the company 2 years ago. As the CEO's son, his path was already paved with opportunities I had worked years to earn. He was charismatic in ways I never managed to be, with designer suits and stories about summers in Monaco. In meetings, he spoke with unearned confidence about concepts he barely understood. Still, I never saw him as a threat. Not to my position, and certainly not to my marriage. The day everything changed started like any other. I arrived at the office early, brewed coffee for the team, and settled in to review our latest projections. My proposal for a new financial model was scheduled for presentation that afternoon. I had worked on it for months, refining the algorithm, until it could predict market trends with remarkable accuracy. Clara kissed me distractedly that morning before rushing out the door. She had started a new position in marketing 3 months earlier, reporting directly to the executive team, including Brandon. I was preparing my notes when my phone buzzed with a meeting request. A last-minute executive session, attendance mandatory, scheduled 30 minutes before my presentation. Unusual, but not unheard of. I gathered my materials, straightened my tie, and headed to the boardroom. Brandon was there, sitting at the head of the table in his father's usual place. 5 other executives filled the remaining seats. Clara stood in the corner, her face carefully blank. When I tell you betrayal has a physical weight, I mean this literally. Something pressed against my chest when Brandon gestured for me to sit. My confusion only grew as Brandon launched into a slick presentation about a revolutionary new financial algorithm. My algorithm. Slide after slide showed my work, repackaged with flashier graphics but unmistakably mine. The same patterns, the same mathematical approach, even the same peculiar naming conventions I used in my code. I glanced at Clara. She would not meet my eyes. Brandon finished with a flourish. This new approach will position Meridian at the forefront of financial technology for the next decade. The room erupted in applause. I remained frozen, hands flat on the table. When the noise died down, Brandon turned to me with a smile that never reached his eyes. Adrian, we need to discuss your future with Meridian. The room grew quiet. Your performance has been adequate, but the company is moving in a new direction. We need innovation, vision, not maintenance. I found my voice. That presentation, that was my work. Brandon raised an eyebrow. I think you must be confused. This has been my project for months. I have the original files on my server, time-stamped drafts, emails. Actually, he said, sliding a folder across the table, our IT department has found concerning evidence that you've been accessing confidential information beyond your clearance level. The folder contained printouts of access logs, cleverly edited to make routine activities look suspicious. I looked up at Clara again. This time she met my gaze, and something in her expression told me everything I needed to know. You are being terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you to collect your personal items. The room blurred around me. 6 years of dedication, erased in 5 minutes. I stood on unsteady legs as a security guard appeared at the counter. You will regret this, I said quietly. Not a threat. A prediction. Brandon laughed. I doubt that very much, Wu. I cleaned out my desk under watchful eyes, then drove home in silence. Our apartment felt empty despite the furniture we had chosen together, the photographs of happier times. I tried calling Clara. She did not answer. Hours passed. Evening fell. When the door finally opened, Clara entered like a stranger. She placed her keys on the counter with deliberate calm. I was going to tell you, she said. Tell me what? That you helped him steal my work? Or that you were sleeping with him? She flinched but did not deny it. You never understood what I needed, Adrian. Security is not enough. I want more from life. So you threw away 5 years of marriage for Brandon Shu? He sees possibilities where you see risks. Clara walked to our bedroom and returned with an envelope. These are divorce papers. Brandon's father is retiring in 2 years. Brandon will take over as CEO. I would have helped you find another position, but you made threats today. I stared at this woman I thought I knew. You actually love him? I love what he can offer me. The cruel honesty was somehow worse than a lie. The life I want. The connections. The future. She left her keys in the envelope on the counter. I am staying with him tonight. Please be gone by the weekend. After she left, I opened a bottle of scotch we had been saving for our anniversary. I drank until the pain dulled enough to think. The algorithm Brandon had stolen could have revolutionized the industry. Instead, it would make him rich and powerful while I scrambled for a new job with the stain of termination on my record. Around midnight, I found myself driving without purpose, eventually stopping at the bridge that spanned the bay. I parked and walked to the middle, looking down at the dark water. Everything I had built gone, my career, my marriage, my future. I climbed over the railing and let go, closing my eyes as the wind rushed past me. I woke with a gasp, clawing at sheets that felt oddly familiar. Light streamed through half-closed blinds, illuminating a bedroom I had not seen in years. Our first apartment. The small one-bedroom Clara had always complained was too cramped for her clothes. I sat up, heart hammering against my ribs. This was impossible. The digital clock on the nightstand read 6:47 a.m. Next to it sat my old glasses, the ones I had replaced with contact lenses 2 years before my termination. My phone buzzed with a calendar alert. Quarterly financial review, 9 a.m. I grabbed it with shaking hands. The date made me freeze. March 15th. 3 years before my termination. 3 years before Clara left me. 3 years before I jumped from that bridge. I scrambled to the bathroom, nearly tripping over a laundry basket that should not exist anymore. The face in the mirror was mine, but younger. No gray at the temples. No lines around the eyes that had appeared during those last stressful months at Meridian. The shower turned on with a familiar squeak we had never fixed. Cold water shocked my system, but the impossible reality remained. Somehow I had been given a second chance. Clara stirred when I returned to the bedroom. Her face peaceful in sleep, unmarked by the ambition and calculation I had later come to recognize. She blinked awake, smiling sleepily. "You are up early," she murmured. I could not bring myself to answer. This woman would betray me, would feed my ideas to another man, would leave me broken. "Adrian, are you okay?" I forced a smile. "Just thinking about work." She stretched, cat-like. "The quarterly review, right? You will do great." The surge of bitterness took me by surprise. How easily affection had once blinded me to her manipulations. Even now, was she measuring my potential? Calculating whether I was worth her investment of time and emotion? "I need to go in early," I said, turning to the closet. "Tonight we have dinner with my parents," she reminded me. I nodded mechanically. Her parents had always liked me. Stable, they called me. A good provider. Like I was a utility rather than a person. The commute to Meridian's headquarters was a trip into the past. The same traffic patterns. The same public radio program I used to enjoy. The same coffee shop where I once grabbed 2 lattes each morning, remembering exactly how Clara liked hers. Today I bought only one. Walking into Meridian's lobby felt surreal. Employees greeted me warmly. People who in my other life had later avoided eye contact after my termination. I nodded back, my mind racing. If this was real, if I truly had a second chance, what would I do differently? My office was smaller than I remembered, befitting my lower position at this point in the timeline. The financial models on my computer were primitive compared to what I would eventually develop. The algorithm that Brandon would steal was merely in its conceptual stages. I pulled up my resignation letter template and began typing. 6 years of dedication had earned me nothing but betrayal. This time would be different. My supervisor looked shocked when I handed him the letter 2 hours later. "Adrian, what is this about? The review went well. You are on track for promotion next quarter." "I need to pursue other opportunities," I said. "Is this about compensation? We can discuss an adjustment." I shook my head. My decision is final. Today will be my last day. By afternoon, my desk was cleared. I had copied only my personal files, nothing proprietary. I had learned that lesson the hard way. As I carried my small box of belongings toward the elevator, I saw Brandon entering the building, laughing with another executive. He did not notice me. He had not yet joined Meridian properly in this timeline, just visiting his father occasionally. In my previous life, we would meet 6 months from now. He would compliment my work ethic, act interested in my ideas, begin laying the groundwork for theft. I walked past him without a glance. Clara called 4 times before I answered. I told her I had quit. She was furious. Without discussing it with me first, "Adrian, what were you thinking? We have plans, a future to consider." "Plans change," I said. "We need to talk about this. I am coming home now." "Do not bother. I will not be there." The conversation ended with her shouting questions I refused to answer. I checked into a hotel, downtown, paid for a month up front, and made a list of what I needed to do. First, physical transformation. The Adrian who had been betrayed was soft-spoken, physically unremarkable. I found a gym with personal trainers and signed up for daily sessions. I threw away my glasses and got new contact lenses. I cut my hair shorter, bought clothes I would never have considered before. Second, preparation. I withdrew our savings, leaving Clara's separate accounts untouched. I registered a new company, Nexus Technologies, with a focus on financial analytics. I rented a small office space in a building across town from Meridian. Third, the algorithm. I had 3 years of knowledge about market trends that had not yet occurred. Combined with the technical skills I had developed at Meridian, I could create something revolutionary. For weeks, I barely slept. Code flowed from my fingers, informed by lessons I had not yet learned in this timeline. The divorce papers arrived, at the hotel. I signed them without reading the details. Clara had made her choice 3 years from now. I was simply accelerating the inevitable. 2 months after my resignation, I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. Broader shoulders, sharper jawline, a confidence in my posture that had never been there before. I had legally changed my name to Adrian Chen, a distant cousin on my mother's side, who had died young. His identity was easy to assume with the right documentation. The first version of my predictive model launched 3 months after I quit Meridian. I targeted small investment firms, offering them insights that seemed almost magical in their accuracy. Within 6 months, Nexus had a growing client list and a reputation for being eerily prescient about market movements. Clara attempted reconciliation. Once, she appeared at my hotel somehow having tracked me down. "Adrian, I do not understand what happened," she said. "We were happy. Were we?" I asked. "Or was I just convenient until something better came along?" Her confusion seemed genuine. In this timeline, she had not yet betrayed me, but she would have. Given time, given opportunity, given Brandon, she would make the same choices. "I think we should go our separate ways," I told her, shutting the door on her protests. By the end of the first year, Nexus had moved to larger offices. I hired carefully, building a team that valued innovation and loyalty. I invested in my own appearance, learning how to project authority and charisma. I studied Brandon's mannerisms, not to imitate but to counter. The divorce finalized without my appearance in court. Clara got the apartment, which was fine with me. I had purchased a penthouse overlooking the bay, a daily reminder of what I had overcome. When I saw Clara and Brandon together 6 months later at a charity gala, I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Right. On schedule, she had found her way to him in this timeline too. Their attraction seemed to transcend fate. This time, however, I would not be the casualty of their ambition. I monitored Meridian's progress from afar. They were following the exact trajectory I remembered. Success, then stagnation as they failed to innovate beyond what I had built. My second chance had given me power they could not imagine. And when the time came, I would show them exactly what they had thrown away. 2 years after my rebirth, Nexus Technologies occupied the top 3 floors of a gleaming tower in the financial district. My office featured a wall of glass overlooking the bay, including a distant view of the bridge that had once been my endpoint. The reminder kept me focused. My team had grown to 65 people, all carefully vetted not just for skill but for loyalty. We had revolutionized financial forecasting with my algorithm, which I named Phoenix. Clients now included 5 of the 10 largest investment firms in the country, along with numerous smaller companies that had flourished under our guidance. The media called me a wunderkind, a financial savant. Tech magazines featured profiles speculating about my background. I gave few interviews and revealed little, cultivating an aura of mystery that only enhanced Nexus's reputation. The less people knew about Adrian Chen, the better. I tracked Meridian's progress religiously. Their stock had begun to plateau 18 months after my departure, exactly as it had in my previous life. Without my innovations, they relied on increasingly outdated models. Brandon had been officially named Chief Strategy Officer, a position created specifically for him. Clara had risen to Marketing Director, working directly under him. Their relationship had gone public 6 months ago, exactly when it had before. The industry blogs called them a power couple. I called them predictable. My executive assistant, May, knocked on my door with the morning briefing. Unlike my previous life, I now surrounded myself with people I could trust. May had been thoroughly vetted before I hired her, and she had proven her worth repeatedly. "The quarterly reports are in," she said, sliding a tablet across my desk. "We exceeded projections by 17%. I scrolled through the numbers, satisfaction warming my chest. And Meridian? Their quarterly results were released yesterday. They missed projections by 8%. Their stock dropped 12 points in after-hours trading. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "What about the Atlas acquisition?" "The board is meeting today. Our sources say they will approve, despite the CFO's objections." Atlas Technologies was a small but innovative company that specialized in supply chain analytics. In my previous life, Meridian had acquired them, using their technology to temporarily boost their sagging performance. The acquisition had been Brandon's one good decision. "Prepare our offer package," I said. "I want it on their CEO's desk tomorrow morning." May raised an eyebrow. You want to outbid Meridian? The numbers we discussed were already at premium. Increase by 15%. I want this to be irresistible. She made a note. There is one more thing. We received an invitation to the Innovation in Finance Gala next month. Meridian's CEO will be receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award. The gala. Another point of convergence with my previous timeline. In that life I had attended as Clara's husband, watching from the background as Brandon networked with industry leaders. This time would be very different. Accept the invitation, I said. And May, I will need a new suit. The next 3 weeks unfolded according to my carefully orchestrated plan. Atlas Technologies accepted our offer, sending shockwaves through the industry. Meridian's stock dropped another 8 points when the news broke that their anticipated acquisition had been snatched away. More importantly, I continued my strategy of surrounding Meridian with strategic acquisitions. Over the past year, I had purchased 3 companies that had been Meridian's key suppliers. I had not changed their management or disrupted their relationships with Meridian yet. That would come later. The evening of the gala arrived clear and cool. I adjusted my custom-tailored suit in the mirror, barely recognizing the man who looked back at me. In my previous life, I had been the unnoticed husband in an off-the-rack suit. Now I exuded confidence and power. My driver pulled up to the red carpet outside the Saunders Hotel ballroom. Photographers snapped pictures as I stepped out. I was not A-list in their world, but the financial press had made me notable enough for their attention. Inside, the ballroom glittered with wealth and influence. I accepted a glass of champagne and surveyed the room. At the far end, Brandon stood with Clara beside him, her hand resting possessively on his arm. She wore a silver dress that caught the light, her hair swept up elegantly. They were speaking with an older man I recognized as Harold Shue, Brandon's father and Meridian's CEO. I kept my distance, circulating among the other guests. Several approached me, curious about the man behind Nexus's meteoric rise. I answered their questions with practiced charm, neither revealing too much nor seeming evasive. An hour into the event, I felt eyes on me. Looking up, I met Clara's gaze across the room. She was staring at me with an intensity that suggested she was trying to place my face. I raised my glass slightly, then turned to speak with the woman beside me. When the award presentation began, I positioned myself where I could observe without being obvious. Harold Shue accepted his Lifetime Achievement Award with a speech about innovation and family legacy. Brandon stood at the edge of the stage, applauding enthusiastically, the heir apparent ready to assume the throne. After the ceremony, as I was preparing to leave, Clara intercepted me near the coat check. Adrian Chen, she said, extending her hand. I have been hoping to meet you. Your company has made quite an impression. I shook her hand briefly. Ms. Lin, your reputation precedes you as well. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Have we met before? Something about you seems familiar. I doubt it, I said smoothly. I would remember meeting someone like you. The line was deliberately similar to what I had said when we first met in my previous life. I watched for any flicker of recognition, but saw only professional interest tinged with something more personal. Perhaps I could interest you in a coffee sometime, she suggested. Meridian and Nexus might find areas of mutual benefit. I smiled thinly. I prefer to keep my professional relationships exactly that. Professional. Brandon appeared at her side, his hand sliding possessively around her waist. Chen, he said with a nod. Impressive move with Atlas, aggressive, merely efficient, I replied. I identified what I wanted and took appropriate action. Brandon's eyes hardened. Meridian has been the industry leader for 20 years. One lucky algorithm does not change that. I raised an eyebrow. Markets disagree with your assessment, but perhaps that is why your stock is where it is. His face flushed. Clara placed a restraining hand on his arm. We should rejoin your father, she murmured. A pleasure meeting you both, I said. I look forward to our future interactions. As they walked away, I heard Brandon hiss, "What were you doing talking to him?" "Networking," Clara replied. "Someone needs to explore potential partnerships." "He is a competitor, not a partner," Brandon snapped. I collected my coat and left, satisfaction warming me more than the garment. Everything was unfolding perfectly. Brandon was showing the same arrogance, the same territorial instinct that had led to his downfall in my previous life. Clara was revealing the same opportunistic nature, already looking for advantage in a new connection. 2 weeks after the gala, Meridian's troubles deepened. A key client withdrew their business, citing concerns about outdated analytics models. Their stock dropped another 15 points. The following day, my phone rang with a number I did not recognize. The voice on the other end was familiar, though I had not heard it in this timeline. "Mr. Chen, this is Harold Shu from Meridian Technologies. I was hoping we might arrange a meeting to discuss a matter of mutual interest." I smiled into the phone. "Of course, Mr. Shu. My schedule is rather full, but I believe I could make time next week. I would prefer something sooner. Perhaps dinner tomorrow evening?" The urgency in his voice told me everything I needed to know. Meridian was falling faster than even I had anticipated. "Tomorrow works," I agreed. "Send the details to my assistant." I hung up and walked to the window, looking out at the bridge in the distance. Phase 1 was complete. Nexus had risen. Meridian was faltering. And now, Harold Shu was coming to me for help, just as planned. The restaurant Harold Shu selected was discreet and exclusive, the kind of place where business titans could discuss sensitive matters without fear of being overheard. I arrived deliberately 5 minutes late, a small power move I would never have considered in my previous life. Harold stood as I approached, extending his hand with a practiced smile that did not reach his eyes. At 65, he remained imposing, his tailored suit emphasizing broad shoulders now slightly stooped with age. "Adrian, thank you for making time," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. I took the liberty of ordering a bottle of Bordeaux. I nodded my thanks as the waiter poured. "I was intrigued by your call. Meridian and Nexus operate in different spheres these days." Harold's smile tightened. "Perhaps less different than you might think. Your work with predictive analytics has been extraordinary. Frankly, I have not seen anything like it since one of our former analysts developed a similar concept years ago. The reference to my former self was either coincidental or a test. I kept my expression neutral. The financial world is smaller than it appears. Innovation often follows parallel paths. We ordered, making small talk about market conditions until our appetizers arrived. Harold waited until the waiter departed before leaning forward. "I will be direct, Adrian. Meridian is interested in exploring a partnership with Nexus. Your predictive models combined with our established client base could redefine the industry." I took a slow sip of wine. An interesting proposal, though I wonder why Meridian would need a partner when you have such talented leadership already. Your son has quite a reputation. Harold's expression darkened momentarily. Brandon has many strengths, but every organization benefits from fresh perspectives. The board and I believe our companies have complementary assets. "The board," I repeated. "So this is an official overture, not just an exploratory conversation." "Very much official," Harold confirmed. "We are prepared to offer significant equity and a seat on the board for the right arrangement." I nodded thoughtfully. "I would need to see detailed financial statements before considering any partnership. Audited books, client contracts, internal projections. Complete transparency." Harold hesitated. "Some of that information is sensitive. All partnerships require trust, Mr. Shu, and trust requires transparency." He studied me for a long moment. "You drive a hard bargain for someone so young. Age and wisdom are not always correlated," I replied. "I will have my legal team prepare an NDA for your review. Once signed, we can proceed with due diligence." The remainder of dinner passed, with lighter conversation, but I could sense Harold's desperation beneath his composed exterior. Meridian's situation was worse than publicly known. Perfect. The next morning, I instructed my legal team to prepare the most comprehensive NDA possible, requiring Meridian to open their books completely. I knew Harold would balk at some provisions, but the negotiation would buy me time to advance the next phase of my plan. 3 days later, May entered my office with a curious expression. "A Miss Lin from Meridian Technologies is asking to see you. She does not have an appointment. Clara, right on schedule." In my previous life, she had always been the problem solver, the one Brandon sent to smooth over difficult situations. "Send her in," I said, arranging my features into polite disinterest. Clara entered with confident strides, dressed in a navy suit that emphasized her professional demeanor. If she was surprised by my willingness to see her without an appointment, she hid it well. "Mr. Chen, thank you for making time," she said, taking the seat I indicated. "I wanted to discuss the partnership proposal personally." I leaned back in my chair. "I am already in discussions with Harold Shu. Is there something specific you wish to add?" Clara crossed her legs, adjusting her posture slightly. A move I recognized from my previous life, one she used when transitioning to persuasion. "The NDA your team sent over has provisions that are problematic for Meridian. I thought perhaps we could address them directly, professional to professional. The NDA reflects the level of transparency required for any meaningful discussion," I said. "If Meridian finds that problematic, perhaps we are not well suited as partners." She tilted her head, studying me. "You seem very familiar. Are you certain we have not met before the gala?" I met her gaze steadily. "Quite certain." "There is something about your mannerisms," she persisted. "The way you phrase certain things." I shrugged. "Perhaps I remind you of someone." Clara nodded slowly. "Perhaps. About the NDA. We are prepared to provide comprehensive financial data, but the provisions regarding executive communications and internal strategy documents go beyond standard due diligence." "Nexus is not interested in standard arrangements," I replied. "If Meridian wants access to our technology, we need to understand the environment in which it will operate. That includes decision-making processes and strategic direction. I prefer to focus on future potential rather than past accomplishments," I said. "Speaking of which, I understand you and Brandon Shu have become something of a power couple at Meridian." Her smile faltered slightly. "Office relationships can be complicated." "I imagine so, especially when professional and personal interests conflict." "They rarely conflict for us," she said, a defensive edge entering her voice. "Brandon and I share the same vision for Meridian." I raised an eyebrow. "And yet here you are, negotiating behind his back." Clara stiffened. "I am not negotiating behind anyone's back. I am representing Meridian's interests." "Of course," I said smoothly. "Perhaps we could continue this discussion over dinner. I find formal office settings can limit creative solutions." The invitation surprised her, exactly as intended. In her eyes I saw calculation, weighing professional opportunity against personal complications. "Dinner would be acceptable," she finally said. "Professional, of course." "Of course," I echoed. "My assistant will contact you with details." After Clara left, I stood by the window watching her cross the plaza below. She walked with the same confident stride I remembered, head high, moving with purpose. Once that walk had captivated me. Now it was merely a data point in my broader strategy. Dinner with Clara was set for Friday evening. On Thursday afternoon, my phone rang again. Brandon Shu, requesting a meeting. I agreed to see him immediately, curious about his approach. He arrived looking less polished than at the gala, with subtle signs of strain around his eyes. The market's punishment of Meridian was taking its toll. "Chen," he said, dropping into the chair opposite my desk without waiting for an invitation. "Let us cut to the chase. What do you want?" I raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" "This partnership, the ridiculous NDA, the dinner with Clara. What is your actual endgame here?" So he knew about the dinner. Interesting. Meridian approached Nexus, not the other way around, I reminded him. As for dinner with Ms. Lin, we are discussing potential compromise language for the agreement. Brandon snorted. "Clara does not have the authority to negotiate terms." Perhaps your father disagrees, I suggested mildly. His face flushed. My father is not thinking clearly. Meridian does not need Nexus. We certainly do not need you. I leaned back, studying him. Your stock has dropped 37% in the last quarter. 3 major clients have withdrawn. Your technology platform is outdated. But please tell me more about how Meridian does not need help. Temporary setbacks, Brandon snapped. We dominated this industry before you appeared, and we will continue to do so long after your lucky streak ends. Luck is a convenient explanation for those who cannot recognize skill, I observed. But since you feel so strongly, perhaps we should end discussions. I am sure Meridian will weather this storm without assistance. His expression wavered, confidence giving way to uncertainty. That is not what I meant. No? What did you mean exactly? Brandon ran a hand through his hair. Look, a partnership could benefit both companies, but the terms need to be reasonable, and this dinner with Clara, that is not necessary. I find Ms. Lin to be an effective communicator, I said. Surely you want the best possible representation for Meridian. I am the best representation for Meridian, he insisted. I smiled thinly. Then perhaps you should focus on demonstrating that to your father and the board, rather than concerning yourself with a business dinner. Brandon stood abruptly. Just remember that any partnership agreement requires my approval as CSO. I will keep that in mind, I said, not bothering to stand. Good day, Brandon. After he left, May entered with a concerned expression. That seemed tense. Predictably so, I replied. Brandon Shu is exactly who I thought he would be. And the dinner with Ms. Lin? Is that wise given the circumstances? I smiled. It is necessary. Brandon's reaction confirms it. Friday evening. Found me at Aurelia, an intimate restaurant overlooking the harbor. I selected a corner table with a view of both the water and the entrance, allowing me to watch Clara arrive. She wore a black dress that walked the line between professional and suggestive, her hair loose around her shoulders. You look lovely, I said as she took her seat. Thank you, she replied. I came directly from the office. It has been a challenging week. I ordered wine while Clara studied the menu. When our drinks arrived, she took a substantial sip before meeting my eyes. I should mention that Brandon knows about this dinner. He was not pleased. So I gathered from our meeting yesterday, I said. Surprise flickered across her face. He came to see you? To assert his territorial claims, both professional and personal. Clara set down her glass with deliberate care. Brandon and I have a complicated relationship. Most relationships are, I said, especially when careers and emotions intertwine. She studied me with renewed intensity. There is something about you, Adrian Chen, something familiar that I cannot place. I smiled. Perhaps in another life. Dinner with Clara stretched past midnight, our conversation flowing from business to increasingly personal topics. I maintained my guard, revealing enough to seem open while carefully avoiding anything that might trigger recognition. She spoke of her ambitions, her frustrations with Meridian's old-fashioned corporate culture, her complex feelings about Brandon. I listened, with the advantage of knowing exactly who she was beneath the practiced charm. You are surprisingly easy to talk to, she said as we waited for the valet to bring our cars. Most men in your position love to hear themselves speak. I find listening more informative, I replied. She stepped closer, her perfume achingly familiar. Perhaps we could continue this conversation another time, without the business context hanging over us. I looked down at her, remembering how I had once loved this woman without reservation, how completely I had trusted her, how thoroughly she had betrayed me. I think we should conclude our professional discussions first, I said. Complications tend to arise otherwise. Disappointment flickered across her face, quickly masked. Of course, very sensible. The following Monday, Meridian agreed to my NDA terms. By Wednesday, my team was deep into their financial records, uncovering exactly what I had expected. The company was in trouble. Revenue had been declining for 6 consecutive quarters. Their technology platform needed a complete overhaul. 3 major clients had exit clauses in their contracts that would trigger within months. I spent the next 2 weeks building my case for a hostile takeover rather than a partnership. Nexus had the capital, thanks to my perfect market timing and the investment structure I had created. What we needed was the right moment. It came sooner than expected. Meridian's quarterly earnings report showed losses significantly higher than analysts predicted. Their stock plummeted 40% in a single day. That evening, Harold Shue called again. "We need to accelerate our discussions," he said without preamble. "The board is meeting tomorrow to consider strategic options." "What options are they considering?" I asked, though I already knew. "Several potential acquirers have expressed interest," he admitted, "but I prefer our original partnership concept, perhaps with adjusted terms." "Such as?" "Nexus would take a majority stake in Meridian. I would remain as figurehead CEO for 1 year during transition. We would integrate our client bases and technology platforms immediately." I let silence stretch for a moment. "And Brandon?" Harold sighed heavily. "His position would be reevaluated as part of the integration." Translated, Harold was willing to sacrifice his son to save the company, just as he had been in my previous life when he begged me to return after Brandon fired me. "I see," I said. "I have a counterproposal. Nexus acquires Meridian outright. You retire with full benefits and recognition. Brandon exits immediately." "That is not a partnership," Harold protested. "That is a takeover." "It is reality," I said. "Meridian cannot survive independently. You know this better than anyone." Another heavy sigh. "The board meets at 3 tomorrow. Can you present your proposal directly?" "I will be there." The Meridian boardroom looked exactly as I remembered it. The same long walnut table, the same leather chairs, the same view of the bay through floor-to-ceiling windows. But this time, I entered as a predator, not prey. Harold introduced me to the board members, most of whom I recognized from my previous life. Brandon sat at his father's right hand, glaring openly. Clara was absent, which surprised me until Harold explained that only C-suite executives were included for this discussion. I presented my proposal directly without embellishment. Nexus would acquire Meridian for a price that represented a 30% premium over their current stock value, though still far below what the company had been worth a year ago. We would retain 70% of their workforce. Their brand would continue as a division of Nexus. "And executive positions?" asked a board member, glancing uncomfortably at Brandon. "We will evaluate each position based on performance metrics and organizational fit," I said. "Some transitions will be immediate, others phased." Brandon slammed his hand on the table. "This is ridiculous. We should be discussing partnerships with equals, not fire sales to upstarts." Harold placed a restraining hand on his son's arm. "Brandon, please." "No," Brandon insisted, shaking off his father's hand. "Does anyone else see what is happening here? This man appears out of nowhere. His company somehow anticipates every market move perfectly, and now he swoops in when we are temporarily vulnerable." I met his gaze calmly. "Markets reward innovation and punish stagnation. Nexus innovated, Meridian stagnated. The results are predictable." "There is nothing predictable about your success," Brandon snarled, "unless you had inside information." A murmur ran through the board members. Harold cleared his throat, uncomfortably. "My son is under significant stress. Please disregard his implications." I smiled thinly. Allegations of impropriety typically come from those most familiar with such behavior. Brandon half rose from his chair. "What are you implying?" "Merely an observation. Though if we are discussing ethics, I would be happy to share what our due diligence uncovered about certain decision-making processes at Meridian over the past 3 years." Harold paled slightly. "That will not be necessary. The board needs time to discuss your proposal privately, Mr. Chen. Would you mind stepping out?" I nodded and left the room, taking a seat in the adjacent waiting area. Through the glass wall, I could see animated discussion, with Brandon gesturing emphatically while several board members shook their heads. After 20 minutes, Harold emerged, alone. The board would like to counter with a structured acquisition, 80% ownership transferring immediately, the remaining 20% over 2 years, contingent on performance metrics. And leadership transition? Harold looked away. They accept your evaluation process for most positions but request that Brandon remain as CSO for 6 months to ensure client continuity. I shook my head. Brandon exits immediately, non-negotiable. Harold's shoulders slumped. May I ask? Why? Professional assessments indicate he would be detrimental to the transition, I said. I am not interested in inheriting problems along with assets. Harold studied me with tired eyes. There is something personal in this, is not there? Have you and my son crossed paths before? I met his gaze steadily. You approached Nexus. Mr. Shu, you opened your books to us. You asked for our assessment. If you dislike the conclusions, you are free to decline our offer. He sighed heavily. I will present your terms to the board. The board deliberated for another hour before accepting my offer with one modification. Brandon would exit immediately but receive a generous severance package. I agreed, knowing the public humiliation of his removal would hurt him far more than any financial consideration could compensate. As I left Meridian's headquarters, Clara was waiting by the elevator. She had clearly heard the news. So you are our new owner, she said, her expression unreadable. Congratulations. The acquisition still requires regulatory approval, I replied. Nothing is final yet. She stepped closer. Will there be a place for me in the new organization? The same Clara, always looking for advantage, for the next opportunity, for the next rung on her ladder. That depends, I said. How do you feel about Brandon's departure? She hesitated, calculation visible behind her eyes. Brandon is talented, but difficult. His relationship with his father complicated objective decision-making. And your personal relationship with him? Another hesitation. Business and pleasure do not always align. I smiled without warmth. An interesting perspective. We will be conducting interviews with all senior staff next week. My assistant will contact you with details. The elevator arrived. As I stepped in, Clara placed her hand on the door, preventing it from closing. There is something I cannot shake about you, she said, studying my face intently. Something incredibly familiar. I met her gaze steadily. Perhaps we knew each other in another life. The elevator doors closed on her puzzled expression. The regulatory approval process took 6 weeks, during which Meridian's stock continued to decline. By the time the acquisition was officially announced, we were paying significantly more than market value, which helped silence any opposition from their shareholders. I appointed May as transition director, instructing her to treat all Meridian employees fairly but to watch for Brandon loyalists. Clara received an interview but no immediate decision, a deliberate strategy to keep her uncertain about her future. 2 days after the acquisition became official, I moved into the CEO's office at Meridian headquarters. Harold had cleared out his personal items, leaving behind only company property. I stood at the window, looking out at the same view I had seen on the day Brandon fired me, feeling the symmetry of the moment. My intercom buzzed. Mr. Chen, Clara Lin is here to see you. Send her in, I said. Clara entered with less confidence than usual, her expression carefully neutral. Thank you for seeing me. I wanted to check on the status of my position. I gestured for her to sit. Still under evaluation. We are restructuring the marketing department. I see, she said. I hope my relationship with Brandon will not unduly influence your decision. Professional evaluations should be based on performance, not personal connections, I replied. She nodded. I agree completely. My record at Meridian speaks for itself. Does it? I asked, opening a file on my desk. Our assessment found inconsistencies in your department's reporting. Projects that underperformed but were classified as successful. budgets that were exceeded without proper documentation. She straightened. I can explain any specific concerns. I am sure you can, I said. You have always been excellent at explanations, Clara. She froze, my use of her name registering strangely. How did you know my name is Clara? I go by Claire professionally. I remained silent, watching realization dawn slowly across her face. Her eyes widened, scanning my features with new understanding. Adrian? She whispered. Adrian Wu? I smiled coldly. Hello, Clara. It has been a while. Clara staggered backward, her hand gripping the edge of my desk for support. Her face had gone pale, eyes wide with disbelief as she stared at me like she was seeing a ghost. This is impossible, she whispered. You changed your name, your appearance, everything about yourself. Not everything, I said calmly. Some things remain constant. Ambition, memory, the capacity to learn from betrayal. She sank into the chair, still staring. But how? When? You left after the divorce. I never heard from you again. I smiled thinly. The official story is simpler. I saw an opportunity in the market and took it. Built Nexus from nothing. Acquired a struggling competitor when the time was right. And the unofficial story? Does it matter? The result is the same. I own the company that you and Brandon used to build your ambitions. The company where you helped him steal my work and fire me. Clara flinched. That was not how it happened. No? Tell me your version then. She hesitated, visibly gathering herself. Brandon saw potential in your work, yes. He wanted to develop it at a higher level than you would have. I never gave him your files or helped him steal anything. I simply did not stop him. A distinction without a difference, I said. I did care for you, Adrian. But our marriage was already failing. You were so focused on security, on playing it safe. I needed more. And Brandon offered more. She looked away. For a time, I leaned back in my chair, studying her. Even now, with her world collapsing around her, Clara maintained her poise. It had been one of the things I had loved about her, that unshakable self-possession. Now I recognized it as the armor of a survivor who would adapt to any circumstance, align with any power, to advance her interests. What happens now? She asked. Now we discuss your future, I said. Your department is being restructured, your position is being eliminated. She straightened, shifting instantly into negotiation mode. I have valuable client relationships, knowledge of the industry, skills that Nexus could use. All true, I acknowledged. And under different circumstances, I might consider retaining you based on those merits, but you will not. No, I will not. Clara looked at me directly, her gaze steady despite everything. This is about revenge, then. This is about consequences, I corrected. Actions have them. Choices create ripples that extend beyond what we can see. So you built all this, became Adrian Chen, acquired Meridian just to fire me and Brandon? I built this because I could, I said. Because in losing everything, I discovered what I was capable of. The rest is simply closing a circle. Clara was silent for a long moment. What about us? There is no us, Clara. There never truly was. You made that clear when you chose Brandon. People make mistakes, she said softly. I made a mistake. I regarded her impassively. Your severance package is generous, 4 months of salary, continued health benefits, job placement services, significant considering the circumstances. She ignored the pivot to business. We could try again. Different. People now, both of us. Stronger, wiser. The Clara I remembered would never have made such a direct appeal. She would have maneuvered, positioned, created circumstances that made reconciliation seem like my idea. This desperation was new and not entirely believable. Why would you want that? I asked. You left me because I lacked vision, ambition. You clearly found those qualities attractive in Brandon. I was wrong, she said simply. About many things. I stood, signaling the end of our conversation. HR will contact you with details about your transition. Your access to the building ends today. Clara did not move. Adrian, please. At least, think about it. I have spent years thinking about it, I said. My decision is final. She finally stood, smoothing her skirt with practiced composure. You have changed more than your name and appearance. The Adrian I knew could never be this cold. The Adrian you knew died the day you chose Brandon. Consider this a ghost, finishing unfinished business. Clara walked to the door, then turned back. For what it is worth, I am sorry. Truly sorry. After she left, I remained standing, staring out the window at the bridge in the distance. The calm satisfaction I had anticipated felt hollow, tainted by something unexpected. Not regret precisely, more like the realization that revenge, even when perfectly executed, changed nothing about the past. Brandon proved more problematic. When security arrived to escort him from the building, he created a scene shouting accusations and threats. Several employees recorded the meltdown on their phones, and by evening, it was circulating on social media. Meridian's stock, now trading under Nexus Control, took a minor hit. The following morning, Brandon called my private line, somehow having obtained the number. You think this is over? He said without preamble, his voice slurred slightly. You have no idea what you have started. What I have finished, I corrected. Your position, your reputation, your relationship, all concluded. My father built that company, he snarled. It was my birthright. Your father built it. You were destroying it. The market simply corrected an imbalance. A harsh laugh. The market. You manipulated everything. Somehow you knew exactly which moves to make, which companies to acquire. I still do not know how you did it, but it was not legitimate. Believe whatever comforts you, I said. The reality remains unchanged. Clara told me who you really are, he said, his voice lowering. Adrian Wu, back from the dead. Did you fake your own death, change your identity? How long have you been planning this? I remained silent. I will expose you, he continued. Whatever game you are playing, whatever fraud you have committed, I will bring it all down. With what evidence? I asked mildly. Your accusations sound like the desperate ranting of a disgraced executive. Your credibility is gone, Brandon. The silence that followed told me he recognized the truth in my words. Finally, he spoke again, his voice eerily calm. She is pregnant, you know. Clara, 12 weeks along. My child. The revelation hit harder than I had expected. Clara had not mentioned pregnancy during our meeting. If true, it complicated her attempt at reconciliation in ways that made her seem even more calculating. Congratulations, I said flatly. I suggest focusing on fatherhood, rather than revenge fantasies. You might find it more fulfilling. Go to hell, Wu, Brandon said and hung up. I placed the phone down carefully, processing this new information. If Clara was pregnant with Brandon's child, her approach to me made even less sense. Unless she had been trying to create confusion about paternity or secure financial support before Brandon's inevitable downward spiral. 2 days later, Clara appeared in the lobby, requesting to see me. I instructed security to send her up, curious about her persistence. She entered my office looking different than before, subdued without the polish and performance that typically characterized her interactions. Brandon told you about the pregnancy, she said without preamble. He did. Congratulations. She sank into the chair across from my desk. It was not planned. Few life-changing events are. Clara looked up at me, her eyes clear and direct. I am not here about my job. I am here because I need you to know something. What I said before about being sorry about making a mistake, that was true. But I was not suggesting we reconcile romantically. I raised an eyebrow, genuinely surprised. No, it seemed quite clear. I was not thinking clearly, she admitted. Shock at discovering who you really are. Fear about my future, guilt about the past, all of it collided. What I should have said was that I hope you find peace, Adrian. Real peace. Not just revenge. Something in her sincerity caught me off guard. Why would you care? Because despite everything, I did love you once. And the path you are on, rebuilding your entire life around destroying others, it will never bring you what you really want. You presume to know what I want. I know what everyone wants, she said simply. To matter. To be seen for who they truly are. To connect. You had that capacity once before I damaged it. I studied her, looking for the manipulation behind the words, but found only tired honesty. What will you do now? I asked. Start over somewhere new. Raise my child. Try to be better than I have been. And Brandon? She sighed. Brandon is spiraling. He refuses to accept any responsibility for Meridian's failures or his own choices. Last night he was talking about lawsuits, exposés, ways to destroy you. Let him try, I said. Clara shook her head. That is exactly what I mean. This cycle of revenge and counter-revenge, it never ends. Someone has to step away. She stood to leave. I will not contact you again. I just wanted to wish you well. Despite everything, I hope someday you find something that matters more than settling old scores. After she left, I sat in silence for a long time. Her words had struck closer to truth than I wanted to admit. The acquisition of Meridian, the systematic dismantling of Brandon's position and reputation, even the restructuring that had eliminated Clara's role, all of it had been meticulously planned and executed. And yet, the satisfaction felt increasingly hollow. 2 weeks later, I received a call from Harold Shue, who had been silent since the acquisition. I heard about Clara's pregnancy, he said after brief pleasantries. Brandon is not handling it well, or anything else for that matter. I am sorry to hear that, I said, surprised to find I meant it. He needs purpose, structure. I was hoping you might consider creating a position for him, something minor away from the main operations, a chance to rebuild. I was momentarily speechless at the audacity of the request. You want me to hire Brandon? After everything? Harold sighed heavily. I know it is an extraordinary request, but I am concerned about his trajectory. Last night he was talking about suicide. The word hit me like a physical blow, memories of the bridge suddenly vivid. That is not my responsibility, I said, my voice harder than intended. No, Harold agreed. It is not. I just thought, given your remarkable journey, you might understand something about second chances. After the call ended, I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the bridge in the distance, the same bridge I had jumped from in another life. The same waters that should have claimed me but somehow sent me back with a second chance. What had I done with that chance? Built a fortune, yes. Reclaimed power, certainly. But at what cost to myself? I called May into my office and made a decision that surprised even me. I'm stepping down as CEO, I told her. Effective immediately. The board can launch a search for my replacement. I will retain my ownership stake but remove myself from operations. May stared at me in shock. May I ask why? I gestured toward the window, toward the future beyond it. I built all this to close a circle. The circle is closed. Now I need to build something for its own sake, not as a response to the past. 3 days later, I sat in a small park overlooking the bay. The same park where Clara and I had once planned our future together. The symmetry felt appropriate for what I was about to do. Brandon arrived looking disheveled, suspicion clear in his bloodshot eyes. Why did you want to meet here? I handed him an envelope. A position at Nexus Singapore, Vice President of Regional Development, new office, new market, fresh start. You have the necessary skills despite our history. Your father had nothing to do with this offer. He stared at the envelope as if it might bite. Why would you do this? Because building is better than destroying, I said. For both of us. Brandon studied my face, searching for deception. I do not understand you. You do not need to. Just decide if you want the opportunity. He took the envelope. And Clara? I have made a similar offer. Different position, different region, Your personal relationship is not my concern. Brandon nodded slowly. I will think about it. As he turned to leave, I added, The bridge does not solve anything, Brandon. Trust me on that. He looked back, surprise registering briefly before he nodded again and walked away. I remained in the park as afternoon faded into evening, watching the lights come on across the bay. The heaviness I had carried for years felt lighter somehow, not gone but transformed into something less consuming. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Clara. Thank you for the offer. I accepted. Moving forward, not back. I did not reply but felt a sense of completion. Not the vindictive satisfaction I had once craved, but something quieter and more enduring. The past would always be part of me, but it no longer needed to define every choice, every action, every response. The next morning I woke before dawn and drove to the bridge. I parked in the same spot I had on that desperate night in another life. Walking to the center, I stopped and looked out over the water, now illuminated by the first pale light of day. Goodbye, Adrian Wu, I whispered to the man I had been, the pain I had carried. Then I turned and walked back to my car toward whatever came next.